to gather evidence for them. And in that situation, it's okay. Science is comfortable holding multiple hypotheses on the table. That ambiguity is accepted as part of the relationship we have with Mother Nature. It's part of the vast mysteries around us. We have to have that ambiguity. So I don't pretend like we've got it all figured out. And as a result, I have felt sometimes that perhaps we know too little to commit to a position of strict atheism. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, we know way too much to commit to any particular religious story, right? So there are 2,000 religions on the globe, and it's been pointed out by others that everyone already knows what it's like to be an atheist, because all you need to do is look at someone else's religion, and you say, well, that's patently ridiculous that you would believe in that. And of course, they're looking back at you and thinking the same thing. Now, the holy books written by the world's religions are often quite beautiful, and they crystallize hard-won wisdom. But in fact, these were written millennia ago by people who didn't know about the size of the cosmos or the Big Bang or bacterial infection or DNA or computation or even very much about neighboring landscapes and cultures. So whenever I'm sitting next to somebody on an airplane, I ask everybody if they've ever heard of the Ultra Deep Field experiment by the Hubble telescope. So far, nobody's heard of that. But everybody's able to tell me all of the details of whatever cultural story they grew up on. And you don't need to be an anthropologist to recognize that our nervous systems absorb whatever our cultures pour into us. So if you grow up in Saudi Arabia, you're going to love Islam. And if you're born in Rome, you love Catholicism and Tel Aviv Judaism and Springfield, Ohio, Protestantism. And it's not a coincidence that there's not a blossoming of Islam in Springfield, Ohio, and there's not a blossoming of Protestantism in Mecca. It's because we're products of our culture. We accept whatever is poured into us, right? If there were one truth, you would expect that it would spread everywhere evenly, but clearly the data doesn't support that. The crazy part is our cultures pour this stuff into us, and then sometimes people are willing to fight and die over the particular stories. Ralph Waldo Emerson pointed out a while ago that the religious stories of one generation become the literary entertainment of the next generation. And you can see that nobody's fighting over Isis and Osiris anymore, or the Greek and Roman panoplies. Not so much. And so I want to give you an example of this. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the creation story of the Bakuba kingdom in the Congo, but their creation story goes like this. There was a white giant named Mombo who had a sharp pain in his belly, and he vomited up the earth and the sun and the moon and the stars. I'm not making this up. And then he had a second pain, and he vomited up the animals and people and trees. And included in that second ejection was, and I quote, the leopard, the anvil, the eagle, woman, the monkey fumu, firmament, medicine, man, and lightning. Now, if you find the creation story of the Bakuba an unlikely explanation for how we got here, just keep in mind that if you were Bakuba, you would find equally bizarre the Western story of the naked couple and the talking reptile and the prohibited produce. And if you were Bakuba living in Kansas, you would be fighting to get this in your children's textbooks. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Bakuba story is wrong or the Adam and Eve story are wrong because there are competing stories. I'm suggesting they're wrong because all the available evidence we can gather weighs against them. So, for example, the biblical story suggests that the Earth is 6,000 years old. Our best science tells us that it's 4.5 billion years old. So that means the biblical account has to somehow explain how the Japanese were making pottery 4,000 years before the Earth existed. So for my money, this puts me somewhere in the middle. I have felt for a long time that we know too little to commit to strict atheism, and we know far too much to commit to a particular religious story.